Chess YouTube, what is happening? In this video, I have a completely insane game for you guys. And this game right here, played between Daniel Naroditsky and Arjun Erigaisi in the Titled Tuesday tournament in May 2025. This game is like one of the most insane, back and forth, aggressive attacking games I have ever covered. You don't want to miss this. All right, in the game, Daniel opens 1e4 and Arjun goes e6. He's played actually quite a bit of the French defense recently, and this guy will literally do anything, and I mean anything, for a fighting game of chess. All right, he plays the French, then we have d4 and d5, and then here, Daniel, he plays the move e5, gaining space, playing the advanced variation. He's played quite a bit of this recently, and will he go for his pet line with the fast knight f3 and bishop d3 without playing c3? Let's find out. In the game, Arjun, c5. There's nothing else. And here, Daniel, he does not defend the pawn. Instead, he plays the move knight to f3. Now, I've seen him play this move specifically a number of times against Magnus. And the reason this move is so weird, he doesn't defend the pawn chain. He gives black the option of taking on d4 if he wants it. Now, Arjun, we have knight c6. And here, Daniel, he insists on sacrificing the pawn. He plays the move bishop d3, again, giving up d4 with no short-term plan for how to recapture it. In the game, Arjun, he takes on d4 and white simply castles. So Daniel, what the heck is he doing? He's literally giving up this pawn on d4 for virtually no reason. This is just completely absurd. All right, in the game, Arjun, bishop d7, developing a logical move. Now c8 is free for the rook, and beyond that, black may want to go, for example, queen b6, then bishop to b5, trying to trade off the light squared bishop. So a good multi-purpose move here for Arjun. Now, Daniel, knight b to d2 is the move. Not the top computer choice. The main two engine moves are rook to e1 here, and c3, giving up the pawn, but trying to develop your knight on c3 if black takes it. So those would be the top moves, but here instead, Daniel, he knows what he's doing. He plays the move knight d2. The idea being, I think he wants to go knight d to b3, trying to recapture on d4 with that knight. So a decent plan, but maybe a little bit slow. And Arjun Erigaisi, the madman, he finds the exact flaw with this plan. It is simply too slow, and for that reason, he counterattacks immediately on the king side with the move f6, the Ben Feingold counterattack, which, sorry Ben Feingold, this move is ideal in this position, as it is in a bunch of French defense positions. All right. Daniel, rook to e1. He defends e5. That way, if black takes on e5, he can take back with the knight, and the knight would be supported by the rook. Therefore, you're not losing the minor piece to the other black minor piece. Now, here, Arjun, he continues, taking on e5. F takes e5 is the move. Then we have knight takes e5, and then knight takes and rook takes. Now, let's slow down right here. Daniel Naroditsky, he gave up the pawn on d4 for seemingly nothing. However, we're starting to see the plan unfold. The queen eyeing this diagonal, hitting the king. The bishop eyeing all of these squares. The rook very active on e5. The knight having access to f3 and then g5. And soon the bishop on this diagonal. Look at all of these lines and diagonals and weird L shapes. I mean, this is just the power of white's position here. All right. Arjun, he knows this, and he starts knight to f6, guarding h5. This move is absolutely critical. You have to guard the h5 square. You cannot allow the Hikaru queen to fly out to h5. All right, Daniel, knight f3, developing the knight and setting up ideas like potentially knight g5, bishop g5, and so on. Let's see what happens. All right, Arjun, bishop d6, very logical, attacking the rook, forcing it back with a gain of tempo. And which square will the rook go to? Will it go to e2 or e1? Both of these moves look logical. e1 is the human move, but rook e2 might be even better according to the engine. Which one will he go to? Comment down below. What is your guess? Which move do you think he will do? Comment down below. Well, actually, it's a trick question. Here, Daniel, he doesn't go back with the rook. He slides it over to the g5 square. I tricked you, Chess YouTube. He goes rook g5, pressuring g7. Now, this kind of move is very risky. It's good, it's offensive, but also the rook risks being trapped on the king side. We can see, like, if the knight were to move somewhere defended, say, I don't know, e4, where it's defended and attacks the rook with the knight and the queen, the rook could be basically lost for nothing. So Daniel, he had to calculate a lot of moves in advance to play a move like this. If it doesn't work, he will essentially lose the game on the spot. All right, Arjun, he does not jump in with the knight. There is no knight e4 here. Instead, short castles is the move. He castles and lines up the rook on the f file, attacking f2, and also guards g7 with the king. A logical idea. Now, Daniel, knight e5. The knight jumps back in, and suddenly white has quite a bit of pressure on the king side here. The rook lining up with g7, the bishop lining up with h7, the knight guarding all of these squares as well as d7, and the queen, of course, having access to, say, f3 and then h3. That could be a winning idea in this game. All right, black, bishop e8, trying to keep the light square bishop alive and also trying to reroute it to a better diagonal. Now, the only drawback with this move right here is there are some lines where the queen would want to have access to e8, as then it would have access to all of these squares. But for right now, the rook and the knight guard all these squares. Therefore, bishop e8 makes a lot of sense. All right, Daniel, queen to f3 is the move, flying over with the queen. And the idea is potentially queen to g3 or h3. Both of those would be good squares for the queen. Now, in response, how will Arjun deal with the pressure? I mean, he's still up a pawn. If he can defend and hang on to the pawn and somehow get this pawn rolling on the board, he's going to have literally a winning advantage, and the computer already says black here is much, much better than white. So what will he do here? Well, he's got a few options, and in the game, Arjun plays the very safe move, queen to e7, defending along the 7th rank with the queen like this. Now, it turns out this was not the time to play safe. Instead, the move is knight d4 with the double attack on the rook with the knight and the queen. And if white takes on e4, black takes back again with the attack on the queen and the continued attack on the rook on g5. So knight e4 overall would be the winning idea here for black. Not to mention, the attack on the queen as well. I mean, that would be so much pressure in one move. But Arjun, for some reason, he doesn't play it. Instead, the move here is simply queen to e7, again, defending along the 7th rank, and Daniel, he immediately exploits it with the move queen to h3, and suddenly, look at the pressure on h7. I mean, imagine if this knight were not there, queen takes h7 would be checkmate, as the knight on e5 guards f7. So this is turning into a winning attack against the black position. And how will black deal with this? Well, he decides now is the time to blunt the pressure with the move g6. Now, anytime you push pawns in front of your own king, it's always very risky, as those pawns can be attacked, can be sacrificed against, and so on. And here Daniel finds an unthinkable move. This move is so shocking, you will lose it. And again, if you like puzzles, pause the video right now and try to find the winning idea for Daniel right here, or at least the one he played in the game. All right, the move here, believe it or not, is bishop takes g6. With this move, Daniel, he literally lights the entire board on fire. The idea is obvious. If black takes the bishop, white takes back with the knight, and suddenly there's all these open lines of attack against the black king, and Daniel is banking on the fact that the attack will be so strong, he'll either win the game outright or gain so much compensation for the missing piece that it won't matter, and he'll simply win the game anyway. Let's see which one it's going to be right here. In the game, black takes on g6 like this. White takes back, and then black takes again. We have bishop takes, and then rook takes is possible, but instead of that, white plays the intermediate move, queen to h6, jumping up with the queen and pressuring g6 like this. And by the way, I do want to point out, instead of queen to h6, if white took on g6 with the rook like this, rook takes g6, that would have been a massive, and I mean massive mistake, as then black simply goes king to f7, intending king to e8, and the king runs away in the center of the board, and black is simply winning. There is no attack. So that would have been losing. Instead, queen to h6, as played by Daniel in the game, was absolutely the right move. All right, now, black, knight to h7 is the move. Black drops back with the knight and pressures the rook on g5. And what is white going to do? Well, here, he simply takes on g6. We have rook takes g6. then king to h8, and then the very strong move, bishop g5. This move, it attacks the queen, but it also capitalizes on the pin on the knight. The knight cannot move as it's pinned to the king. That would lead to a check. So that is not a legal move. So what is black going to do? Black here, he slides over with the queen and out of the attack of the bishop on g5. Queen to f7, stepping out of the attack and also threatening a deadly check on f2. For example, if white here wastes a move, let's say white plays the move, I don't know, rook to a3. If white plays a3, black wins in like 3 moves. Queen takes f2, the king goes over, queen f1, rook takes, then rook takes, and that would decide the game. So in this position right here, white has to respond to the threat, and Daniel plays the move f4, gaining space and bringing yet another piece into the attack. In the future, white can potentially threaten f5. Daniel, he knows in the attack, you must bring literally every single piece into the attack, including the pawns if you can. All right, black, rook a to e8 is the move, sliding over with the rook, then rook to e1. The rook also slides over, and then bishop c5. Black here threatens d3 with a discovered attack on the king on g1. In response, Daniel, before black can do that, he plays the move b4, an aggressive pawn sacrifice. The idea being, if black obviously goes d3, you lose the bishop, but if black takes on b4, he gets the bishop off the critical a7 g1 diagonal right here, and therefore white would be okay. So instead, black simply goes back to the e7 square with the bishop. Bishop to e7 played in the game, a good defensive idea. But now Daniel, this guy is not slowing down one bit. He continues the attack with the strong move h4, gaining space on the king side. I mean, Daniel playing an unbelievable game so far. All right, Arjun, how do you defend against all of this pressure here? Literally all of the white pieces working in unison to attack the black king. What do you do? Well, the right move here is rook g8, trying to defend. Instead, black plays the move bishop takes g5, giving up the bishop for this piece here. But this move, it's a massive mistake as it opens up the H file for white. Now look at this. White can potentially go rook f1 to f3 to h3, or even king to, I don't know, f2, rook h1, and so on, lining up more pressure on the H file. And beyond that, this pawn on g5 is now an attacking piece in the game as well. So, Arjun, how do you defend? The right move here is rook to e7, defending along the 7th rank. Instead, rook g8 played in the game, but this move is a mistake. We have rook to f6. The rook slides over, pressures the queen, and keep in mind, again, the knight, it's pinned to the king on the h8 square. Black, queen to g7 is the move. The queen slides over. We have queen to h5. The queen slides back. Rook to e7, defends, and then finally, rook e takes e6. Now we have rook takes and rook takes. White wins back one of those pawns. Arjun still being up material here, but keep in mind, Daniel has this giant mass of passed pawns on the king side. If he can get these pawns rolling down the board, they might be worth more than the black knight on h7. All right, Arjun, he knows this. He needs counterplay, and he needs it right now. And he plays the move d3, a strong move, trying to attack c2, but also attacking the d4 square with the queen, setting up ideas like queen d4 check, hitting the king, which could be very, very strong. Now, we have c takes d3, regaining that pawn, queen d4. The queen slides down and pressures the white king on the g1 square. The king slides over, king to h1 is the move. And then here, Arjun, he's played a series of very good moves, and here he has to follow up with the right idea. And the right idea right here, right now, is simply rook c8, pressuring c1 with the rook, threatening rook c1 check, hitting the king on the h1 square. Look at this geometry. And from there, of course, the pawn on h4 is also vulnerable, and black could get some sort of mating attack against the white king. That would be the way to go. But instead here, black, he takes on f4 immediately, and this is a huge mistake. As white, this guy is not slowing down. Daniel, he plays the move g6. And look at this. The knight is pinned to the king, cannot go anywhere, and the g-pawn threatens the knight in one move. All right, black, what does he do? We have queen to f1, hits the king, king to h2, queen f4. Now, keep in mind, if the king goes back to h1, it is a draw by 3-fold repetition. The king and queen go back and forth, back and forth. It is a draw on the spot. Therefore, Daniel, if he wants to play for a win here, he has to go forward with the king, not back. He goes to h3, king to h3. The king is now very vulnerable, but again, he had no choice. Arjun, queen to c7. The queen slides back and defends h7. White takes with the queen. We have queen takes, then queen takes, g takes, and then rook g7. Arjun opting not to capture the pawn, but that may turn out to be a major mistake. Now, Daniel, rook to h6. He defends the pawn for now, and here's the problem. If black takes on h7, white takes back, the black king takes, and then king g4 leads to a winning endgame for white, as this pawn will be a distraction. Black will have to win it sooner or later, and while he does, white will simply gobble up all of these pawns in the center and on the queen side. Trust me on that. So, here, black is got to counterattack. Rook to e7 is the move, a good idea. Threatening rook to e3, hitting the king and the pawn on d3. In these rook endgames, the number one most important factor besides, say, the passed pawns and pushing them is the activity of the rooks. You must keep your rook as active as possible, and Arjun, he knows this. All right, king g4. The king slides up and steps out of the attack of the rook on the e3 square. Now, rook to e2. The rook slides down, pressuring g2 and a2 as I hold my breath for 30 minutes straight. Now, king f3, the king slides back, attacks the rook, and it takes on a2. Rook takes a2, wins the pawn, then g4. That passed pawn must be pushed, and here Daniel, his plan is so simple. Push this pawn all the way to g7, find a way to defend the pawn on g7, and checkmate black, or push a pawn and win the game via promotion. And what will black do in response? Well, Arjun, he's got to act now, and he's got to act decisively. He plays the move a5, going for immediate counterplay on the queen side. Time is of the essence. White takes, and black takes back. And now Arjun, he's got a pass pawn on the queen side, and therefore fighting chances in this game. All right, white, we have g5, then b5, then g6. Now, of course, g7 would hit the king, and as soon as the king takes, h8 promotes to a queen, and everything is defended by everything else, and white would win the game. So that is the threat. How will Arjun defend? He goes back with the rook. Rook to a8, defending along the back rank. The point is, if white goes g7, the king takes, and then the king and the rook both guard h8, and black would hold. So g7 is not possible yet. Instead, Daniel, rook to h5. The rook slides back to the h5 square, threatening both of these pawns via the attack or the x-ray attack. Now, we have king g7, king to e3. The king slides over, b4. The march of the passed pawn continues, king d4, then rook c8, blocking the king on the c file. Talk about a you-know-what block. All right, rook takes d5. The rook wins the pawn on d5. Then king takes g6. Daniel winning one of these critical pawns on the king side. Is he able to hold? It's going to be very close. Now here, the key move for white is rook d7. You have to guard the pawn on h7, and from there, you threaten rook b7, trying to win this pawn as well. But instead, he goes rook b5, and this is the wrong square for the rook. Here, Arjun, he takes the pawn on h5, king takes, and after rook takes, we're now down to one pawn left in a theoretically drawn endgame, meaning if black plays literally perfectly, we're talking perfect computer chess here, he should be able to hold. All right. We have king g6, the king must get as close to the e file, or the d file, sorry, as humanly possible. If it does that, that will maximize his odds of holding the game. Now, rook b5. Guards the king on this rank right here. Then we have king to f6, rook d5, king e6, rook e5 hits the king d6, rook d5, king e7, and then rook c5, offering the rook trade. And very importantly, if black trades rooks right here on c5, that is a winning endgame for white with precise play. For example, rook takes, king to, say, d7 is met by king to d5, that is winning, and also king to e6 is met by king to c6, and that is also winning for white. All right, instead of that, rook to a8 is played. Arjun, he defends. He continues to fight on. Now, from here, both sides start sharking around for a very long time. Both sides sharking around with their pieces, flipping and flopping, flopping and flipping, slipping and sliding, sliding and slipping the pieces all over the place until finally here, d4, white makes a little bit of progress. And now we continue the shuffling of the pieces. Both sides going back and forth, not much happening for a little while longer. A very, very long series of moves with neither side really making a whole lot of progress until at the very end, way down here, White finally goes d5, again trying to advance. Now, rook g4 hits the king. King f5. Rook to d4 threatens the pawn. And White, he gives up the pawn, but that is not the end of the story. Daniel, he gives up the pawn. Rook a6. King takes d5, but that is not the end of this game. Daniel, he's playing on for a win in time pressure with 7 seconds versus the 3 seconds of Arjun. The audacity of this man. Rook a5, he's playing for a win. King c4, rook a1, rook d8, king e4, king b5, rook b1, then rook c1, and then rook h1. Now king c8, king e5, king d7, king f6. Arjun down to 2 seconds left on the clock. Can he hold this game? King c8, rook c1, king b8, rook b1, king c7. He's down to 1 second. This is not looking good for Arjun. Rook a1, king d7, rook c1, rook e8, rook d1, king c8, king f7 attacks the rook. He sees this and rook d8 offers the rook trade. If White trades on d8, it's a draw on the spot. And now Arjun, his clock has disappeared, meaning he has less than 1 second to make all of his moves. Rook c1 hits the king, king b8, rook b1 hits the king, king a8, then rook a1. And here Arjun Erigaisi, he runs out of time on the clock. Daniel, in a completely drawn position, he draws out the clock of Arjun Erigaisi and he wins the game in time pressure. The audacity of this man to win this way. Wow, what a game between Daniel Naroditsky and Arjun Erigaisi. I mean, starting with the insane opening with the move. Let's see here. Bishop takes g6 right out of the opening, spearheading the attack against the Black King. Really, really insane stuff. Daniel Naroditsky showing he is simply not human in this game, but I don't know about the ending. What do you guys think about Daniel winning in time pressure against Arjun in a completely drawn position, theoretically? I mean, this is kind of ballsy on his end. So comment down below if you think that was a fair move or a little bit unsportsmanlike. I mean, I don't really have an opinion. I think it's fair game, but maybe you guys see it differently. So comment down below what you think of this way to win. Was it an audacious move? Would you say the audacity to Daniel, or was it fair play? Let me know your thoughts down below and go ahead and smash that YouTube like button to help support the channel. And as always, I wish you the best of luck in your chess improvement journey in 2025 and beyond. And I'll see you in the next video.